China has imposed some of the strictest coronavirus lockdowns in the world, and it's far and away the leader in terms of vaccinating its population. But those protections haven't been enough against the Delta variant, which has led to the country's worst outbreak in months. As Paolo Montecillo reports, the more contagious strain of coronavirus is threatening the economic recovery in China and the rest of Asia.
A relatively mild outbreak, especially for a country of 1.4 billion people. Still, Chinese authorities have gone into overdrive to contain its biggest increase in infections in months.
This month, 328 local cases were reported nationwide, which is close to the total for the previous 5 months. 14 provinces, autonomous regions and municipalities have already reported confirmed cases or asymptomatic infections.
The bulk of the new cases have been identified as the highly contagious Delta variant. Officials suspect it entered the country last month on a flight from Russia to the eastern city of Nanjing. It's now spread south to Fujian province, north to the capital Beijing, and full circle back to where the pandemic began, the central city of Wuhan. The metropolis had been coronavirus-free for more than a year, but reported 3 cases on Monday. Wuhan's government is now testing all of its 12 million residents. Lockdowns and travel restrictions have also been put in place in different parts of the country.
This outbreak is caused by the imported Delta variant. This Delta variant has a high viral load, is highly contagious, spreads with a high speed, and has a long recovery time.
The flare-up is the latest risk to the recovery of the world's second largest economy. Growth slowed in the second quarter to under 8%. Down from 18% in the 3 months prior. The Delta variant is also dimming prospects in Southeast Asia, where only 10% of the population are fully vaccinated. Last month, the IMF slashed its 2021 growth forecast for the region's 5 biggest economies to 4.3%. That's down from its 5.2% projection in April.
We can barely make a living now. All of my family members are affected. The government failed to provide vaccines on time. Many of us in here haven't even had vaccines yet, including those at home too.
The Delta variant is also spreading fast in other major economies like India, Japan, and South Korea. It's a sign that even with vaccines, the worst pandemic in a century is far from over. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Well, for more, let's go to Michael Hewson in London. He's Chief Market Analyst at CMC Markets. Good to have you back with us, Michael. We know China was the first to be hit with COVID-19, but it was also the first to successfully contain it and have its economy really bounce back during the pandemic. But as we heard there, we're now seeing signs of a slowdown in GDP growth. We're also seeing things like factory activity slow at its slowest pace in 17 months. What's going on there? Is this a slowdown that's to be expected, or should we be worried?
Well, I think there's 2 things here, Oscar. First and foremost, China's economy was slowing even before these outbreaks were identified. So I don't think an increase in infections is going to be helpful. There was already a significant amount of concern that China's economy was slowing because of those second quarter GDP numbers. And if you recall, earlier this week, the manufacturing PMI came in at its lowest level in quite some time. So this is not good news for Asia and emerging markets, given the fact that we're getting rising outbreaks in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Japan. You're getting calls there for further lockdown measures. And earlier today, German chip maker Infineon basically cited production shutdowns in Malaysia and the US for part of the reason why the German chip levels are at a 30-year low. So this does have consequences outside the Asian economies, but we're certainly seeing it in the Nikkei 225, which peaked earlier this year and has been in a downtrend ever since.
Let's talk more about the broader Asia region. As you pointed out, the Delta variant seems to be wreaking havoc on some of the major economies there, including, as you say, Japan, India, Indonesia, Singapore, and even Australia. We're seeing lockdown measures being imposed in those places right now, which managed to avoid them largely earlier on in the pandemic. Are you worried about the knock-on effect that this might have in terms of the global economic recovery? Could we see a slowdown because of what's happening in Asia?
I think this is my primary concern. I mean, if you take Australia as an example, they wasted that time that was available to them to get their population vaccinated because they bought in to the scare about the AstraZeneca virus, and ultimately they didn't get enough jabs in arms. And now ultimately we've got the prospect that we could well see a two-tier recovery. Ultimately, here in Europe and the United States, vaccinations are well above 50%. And in Asia, they're trending at well below 50%. And I think this is a real problem for the global economy. You could get an unlocking in terms of the UK, the US, and Europe, but you won't be able to get any travel to Asia because of the fact that their vaccination levels are well below levels that they are over here.
Okay, Michael Hewson from CMC Markets. We'll have to leave it there, but good to get your analysis as always. Thank you for that.